This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Evan Janssen. The show, of course, live as always, broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We are also live on YouTube right now, where the entire show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now today, we look back at the weekend's polls in Nigeria that has been described as largely peaceful. We also get an update from the Social Cohesion Summit that's underway in the Eastern Cape. Later, we'll cross to Zimbabwe for an update on the by-election process in that country. And we close by looking back at the Cricket World Cup that finished in Australia yesterday. Lots of unhappiness about unsportsmanlike behaviour there. But first, the day's news from Anindo Mal.
Good morning, I'm Anindo Mal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. COSATU's General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi is expected to be ousted by the Federation today. Later today, COSATU's Central Executive Committee will meet in Johannesburg to decide the fate of Vavi. At a news conference yesterday, Vavi said he wouldn't resign and dared the CEC to fire him. He also confirmed he will not attend the meeting. This will be the second meeting Vavi is boycotting.
I'm refusing to make it easy for those who are trying to hijack the organization.
Meanwhile, NUMSA General Secretary Ivan Jim says the Metal Workers Union will remain behind Vavi.
Those who want to fire him in boardroom, they must fire him. He must continue with workers' struggle and mobilize them behind their workers' common program. I think that's a momentary issue currently.
Eskom Chairman Zola Tsotsi will know his fate today. The power utility will decide whether the embattled chairman should be suspended in a special board meeting. Tsotsi is to face allegations of misconduct involving dishonesty. He has alleged that Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown is orchestrating moves to remove him from the Travel Parastatals Board. Meanwhile, the DA wants to know if a national blackout could be on the cards. The party reacted to reports that Eskom is running simulation exercises in preparation for a countrywide blackout. DA parliamentary leader Musi Maimane has written to Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa requesting that Parliament be provided with an accurate report on the maintenance needs of Eskom's power stations. Eskom says the simulation exercises are done regularly and that the power system has multiple layers of protection in place to prevent a blackout from occurring. Police are searching for more suspects following yesterday's shooting on the N3 highway in Edenvale. The shooting in Gauteng's East Rand left 2 policemen dead and a third wounded. The lone surviving policeman remains in a serious condition in hospital. Police say the suspects opened fire after police tried to pull their car over. Nigeria's Election Commission says it intends to announce the winner of the presidential vote by the end of today. Polling in some places had to be extended to yesterday because of technical problems. There's been widespread praise for the way Nigerians voted in the general elections at the weekend, despite problems that occurred. New electronic card readers malfunctioned during balloting, while suspected Boko Haram militants killed more than 20 people. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anine. Now, despite the occurrence of technical hitches, protests and reports of violence, voting has been largely peaceful and orderly in Nigeria. As votes are still being counted, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has hailed the country's presidential elections. Nigerians now await the outcome of the poll. And, well, we are joined on the line from Abuja by Nigerian journalist Peter Masham, who will give us the very latest. Very good morning to you, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning from Africa. It's a pleasure.
Peter, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, votes are still being counted. Do you have any confirmed idea of when final results will be announced? Well, unfortunately, we've lost the line there with Peter Masham, who's in Abuja, who's going to give us a quick update as to what's going on in Nigeria at the moment. But joining us in studio to talk about the outcome of the elections in Nigeria, what that outcome might be, well, we are joined by political analyst Richard Iruanya, and then journalist Solomon Izanga Shams. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
Richard, can I start with you? Your reactions, firstly, to the largely peaceful, only 20 dead, largely peaceful elections in Nigeria at the weekend.
Well, I think it is a commendable effort. If you compare this to what we had in previous elections, you will agree with me that this has been a very peaceful election. But it is not over yet, considering the fact that even the 2000 election was generally peaceful until the results were announced. Then we started having crisis in the northern part of the country. So we pray that this time around that the outcome of the result will be reflective of the wishes of Nigerians.
Solomon, what are your views?
Well, I think it's commendable. A lot of fairness and credibility a little bit, and in spite of the technical hitches. It's something that we expected. There's a few people died from it, and some states like Bauchi states had to put on a 24-hour curfew because of that. So votes are going to be lost in a lot of areas. River states have a lot of crisis where thousands were protesting, manipulation of the results, and the Electoral Commission is saying, look, we have to do that. But I think we have to give credit to the Electoral Commission, like Richard said. If you compare yesterday's election, Saturday's and yesterday's election to 2011, is totally different. In as much, just credibility has been brought back, and it's good that the machines were used, to really scan that, because Nigeria's election has been really ravaged by rigging over the years, and it's all about using money to get results. But now people are going to begin to get confidence in the leadership. And also, when the result was announced, the last election in 2011, about 800 people died, during and after the election. And so we have to really look at it again.
Richard, what does this improved showing and call it a free and fair election, what does it mean to Nigeria and then to West Africa?
I think generally what it means is that our democracy is maturing. Like I said in the previous election, 2009 it was violent. 2003 election was worse than 1990. Sorry, 1999 election was good. 2003 election was worse than 1999 election. And 2007 election, 2007, was worse than 2003. And 2011 was worse than 2007. So now we are witnessing the fact that if this goes as we all are expecting, concluded peacefully, then of course we can say that our democracy is maturing, and we are setting a good example as the so-called giant of Africa, and for other countries to follow. And of course, it will show a great deal of credibility and stability also in the region and the country also particularly.
Let's talk about preliminary results. Some people are talking about Goodluck Jonathan being in the front, but is it a little bit too early to tell? And what's your expectation for results?
I think it's way too early to really tell, because we have different people giving their own results. Maybe the political parties, they have agents who are collating the results together. I think we have to wait for the Electoral Commission, because that would create a huge confusion if the main party, PDP, begins to say this is the state of the results, and then APC doing the same thing, or some of the media guys, doing the same thing. I think it's too early, but from the results that have been coming in, in Abuja, there's been a bit of a result in Ekiti State, which is a PDP stronghold. PDP is doing so well there. In the north, in part of Kano, Buhari, APC is quite strong there. So there's been some sort of result. But I'm expecting a very close finish. A very close finish that either party is going to feel not happy about it, but it's really going to be strong. And again, for me, if we restore the credibility of the Electoral Commission, then we can restore credibility in the leadership. At the end of the day, we need credibility in leadership of Nigeria, and I think that's what is going to be created.
Now, Richard, before the real threat, it's too early to tell is probably the right phrase to use in the entire case that's going on. In previous elections, the real violence only really happened after the results were announced. So would it be too early to tell again now to say free and fair, wonderful election, great example for the rest of Africa.
Of course, history will ask me to be cautious, and I think it is still too early to call until the results should be announced today or later today. And I think and people should also understand and draw the roadmaps, to victory. For you to emerge as the winner of the Nigerian presidential election, you do not only have to win the popular vote, you also have to win two-thirds of the states, and that's about 24 states, having 25% of the votes in two-thirds of the states. And now what it implies that Buhari, as it stands for me, has a chance to win, but that means that he has to win the whole of the Northwest, Northeast, North Central, Southwest, and that is not going to be easy. He has lost the Kitty State already. Yeah. Now, the President, Jonathan Goodluck, has to win also, has to win the whole of the Southeast, South-South, which are, of course, his traditional strongholds, and, of course, making cautions in the North Central and Southwest, which are, of course, battle line states. Now, it is possible for Jonathan to lose the North, but have 25% in some of the states. Yeah. But it is impossible for Buhari, as it stands, going by a previous election, to have 25% in the 10 states that we put in Jonathan's column. So they need to also understand this, because people will always expect that for you to win, you need to have won the popular vote. It is not like that.
Yeah. What does the country look like under Buhari compared to Jonathan? What are the two options that the Nigerian people should look forward to now?
It's going to be really, sometimes you look at their campaign promises and manifestos. There's a lot of talk on security, job creation, and the eradication of corruption. Buhari was the head of state previously in the 1980s, and he was a champion of discipline and anti-corruption. So I think people would be looking forward to really fighting corruption in leadership and within the political system. And also, definitely, there's going to be security. He was an army general, so he has a lot of experiences. So that's two strongholds for him. But on the part of Jonathan has done a lot for young people, for youth, so they're probably going to look forward to continuing that. And if he is going to keep to his campaign promises, then he would have to revisit his security strategies again, because that is definitely one of his weakest points during his tenure as a president. So those are some of the factors that people would definitely look at. Corruption is also something that he struggled with. Not him, but a lot of people around him, which has become almost like a system. And I think Nigerians have gotten to a place where corruption really needs to be dealt with.
It's institutionalized corruption, I think, Richard. But I want to move the conversation to the other threat that seemingly has been dealt with. Boko Haram, yes, there have been attacks, there have been isolated incidents. More than 20 people have lost their lives in some of these attacks. But does this fairly free election show that the threat of Boko Haram has been dealt with in Nigeria?
I think I will agree with that, but we are also, back to the fact that no country can summarily defeat an insurgency or a terrorist organization. The United States, for example, has not been able to do that. And the attack that we have that happens from time to time in Europe shows also they've not been able to adequately deal with that. And so Boko Haram had the audacity to even proclaim a caliphate in some of the states in Nigeria. And now they've been able to pushed away, from the traditional, from the area that they declared caliphate, and that shows a lot of achievement on the part of the Nigerian government, and of course the regional cooperation that we are seeing, maturing in Africa, the cooperation of Cameroon, the cooperation of Chad, the cooperation of Niger. And because these countries got involved in the crisis, we have seen the situation where the Nigerian army was now able to deal with Boko Haram that operate inside the country. So I think it's a reasonable degree of success on their part.
You share this view?
I see it, as a sign of really, for us, we need to re-strategize. If you look at, you don't just have to look at other nations that have insurgency situations, but you also have to look at Boko Haram, its composition, and also its goal. And I feel the Nigerian army, we used to be touted as the biggest army in Africa. Yeah. We were strong in the West African region, Liberian Civil War, we were there, in Sierra Leone, in the Congo, in Sudan. And I feel, again, we go back to corruption and look at how corruption has really ravaged the system, the security in itself. I feel if the security system was not corrupt, we would have dealt with Boko Haram a long time ago.
Well, gentlemen, I thank you for joining you. The world is watching Nigerian elections. The outcome is expected today. But let's just quickly recap. The Nigerian Election Commission says it intends to announce the winner of the presidential vote by the end of today. Polling in some places had to be extended to yesterday because of technical problems. The race between the current president, Goodluck Jonathan, and the former military ruler, Muhammadu Buhari, is extremely tight, and tensions are running high as Nigerians await the outcome of the poll.
This is Gishiri village, one of the areas affected by the faulty voters' card reader machines. Thousands were turned away after they were unable to register. Hajia Medina is one of them. She returned on Sunday, hoping for another chance to make her mark.
We came here in the morning, was waiting for some hours before they came. It is not that they came.
Hours under the sun also infuriated other voters. And when they did arrive,
after 4 hours, electoral officers finally arrived, that leading to many scuffles between voters and the electoral agents.
Agents could do little to calm voters. Eventually, the process got underway, and police say despite this, no incidents were reported in the capital.
We delivered on our promise, and we continue to deploy until the entire process is over. What we are witnessing is a result of planning, extensive planning we did concerning this exercise. And so far, in all parts of FCT, the reports we are getting are very encouraging, very, very peaceful. And you know, they are already declaring the results from the war.
It's not yet clear when the results can be expected. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News, Abuja in Nigeria.
Well, the latest reports, of course, are that those results are expected a little bit later today, or at least by the end of today. But let's take a look at your tweets on the Nigerian elections. There we have some pictures. That one from Kenneth Ojoke, and the picture is about Nigeria decides. He's at an election. He's at a polling station there. Send us that picture. There you have general pictures. Mr. Dope says Bishop David Oyedepo directed by the registrar to cast their votes in the Nigerian election. There you have more pictures. A wonderful photo of a man being brought to vote by nurses from hospital. Nigeria decides 2015. There you have a wonderful picture of the peaceful nature of the queuing. Mothers of Al-Majiri to teach patience a lesson she will never forget. Sheriff Ibrahim Al-Muhajir talks about Nigeria decides, and that was on the eve. Yesterday, the people of Bauchi are asking for only one thing: respect our wish. That is what Nigeria is saying today. Respect our wish, respect our poll. Now today's tweet of the day comes from TV Joshua. What we are doing now is for generations yet unborn. Don't trade this future for money, thuggery, or corruption. TV Joshua as Nigeria decides. That's pretty much the view of the entire nation. It's about the future generation, and corruption seems to be a continued backstory to this election. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the world. In Europe, The Times. David Cameron will claim today that a Labour government will increase the tax bill for every working family by more than £3,000 as it tries to bring former supporters back into the fold and calm jangling Tory nerves. Then we move to the Middle East in Israel, where the Jerusalem Post, amid numerous signs that the world powers will sign a nuclear agreement with Iran this week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made clear yesterday that his rhetorical blitz against such an accord will continue unabated. And down under in Australia, the Australian reports the dream sequence. Australia's pace spearhead Mitchell Starc, who disturbed the woodwork of New Zealand captain Brendan McCullum in the opening over. Third ball would be the charm. This is Australia won the World Cup there yesterday. They did so, but they didn't win many hearts. Apparently on social media, there's a storm around their unsporting behavior. A little bit later, I'll talk to Ed Rainsford about exactly that, and we'll take some of your tweets and some of the tweets that, well, that hit the headlines over the last 24 hours. But let's take a look now at what is happening here in our country, South Africa. We start here in Johannesburg, where the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Buti Manamela, will convene a conference on the draft National Youth Policy this morning. Then in Pretoria, Public Protector Thuli Madonsela will release several investigation reports at the Public Protector House this afternoon. In Lesotho, the South African Development Community, SADC, that's facilitator, Deputy President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, will speak at a ceremony marking the closure of the SADC facilitation office after elections and turmoil in the landlocked Southern African country. Now, it's time for us to take a break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games, and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Guinea is reopening an Ebola clinic in its remote southeast in an effort to prevent sick nationals seeking better treatment elsewhere.
The new labor law also seeks to clamp down on violent strikes by holding a trade union liable for violence committed by its members during a strike.
The new canal is set to boost annual revenues to about $13 billion by 2023. It's part of a larger project to expand port and shipping facilities around the canal.
This is Vigigas's fourth victory on the PGA Tour.
That's all the weather that I have for you for now. Stay tuned.
For all your business news, catch news at 1 every day. Be informed.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Let's just take a quick look. There's been a storm happening around the World Cup final on social media. Let's just take a look at some of the tweets that viewers have been putting. They're not very happy with Australia's sportsmanship. Assad says, sledging a guy who's just got out after playing brilliantly. The reason why most neutrals despise Australian teams. Graceless, says Assad, talking about the final, the Oz versus New Zealand. Frank Savaglio says, disgusting that Australian cricketers always resort to sledging. The reason why most neutrals despise them, of course, even in the biggest games, they can't win with honour, says Frank. KK Peheno says, is sledging and in-your-face a kind of attitude the only reason why people hate the Australian team? Strong words, those are after the World Cup final yesterday. Yes, Australia were crowned Cricket World Champions for a 5th time, but the unsportsmanlike behaviour, as we've seen in the final against New Zealand, caused much unhappiness on social media and then in New Zealand as well. Now, I'm joined this morning by Zimbabwean fast bowler turned commentator Edward Rainsford. He's with me this morning. Morning, Ed.
Morning, how are you?
Very good, Ed. What do you make of the kind of fallout after the World Cup final now with, the send-offs that the Aussies have been giving New Zealanders, telling them, oh, we're not as nice as the South Africans, and you were too nice to the South Africans. Now we show you how to play this game and how to win.
Well, I think the Australians have worked out a method of pinpointing 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of the best players and really attacking them in terms of verbals that are out of earshot of the umpires, and they do that when they're under pressure. They knew they were going to be playing against a very good New Zealand team that hasn't lost a game in the World Cup, so they were looking to find a way of maybe, as you say, maybe breaking the back of the New Zealanders. And I remember a game I commentated it in Zimbabwe, where South Africa played Australia, where Australia made about 328, and AB de Villiers and Faf du Plessis chased it down like 2 or 3 down. And they copped a lot of abuse from the Australians, but that's what they do when they're under pressure.
So they call it mental disintegration. What do you make of this way of winning compared to the South Africans who, in a way, some people accuse them of being a little bit passive and a little bit too goody two-shoes to win these big tournaments?
I think there's a way of sledging in that you need to do it systematically and in a clever way. I think the way the Australians did, I remember there was an incident yesterday where Brad Haddon actually was clapping the batsman off and it was in his face, and I think that's there's no place for that in the sport. I think the South Africans have a very talented group of players, and they usually want to make their results speak more than their words. AB de Villiers is not a person that likes to that sort of thing, and Hashim Amla is a very calm individual, likes to do the work with his bat.
It's all good and well to have the talent and to have the composure in a way, but in these big tournaments, do you need that mental edge, that strength of character, that little bit of winning ugly mentality to get the job done, as the Aussies showed time and again?
Well, sometimes it works for you in that if you're not mentally strong, it'll really affect you. In the game yesterday, Grant Elliott survived a decision that he reviewed, and then after that, the way he played, and you could see the Australians were always in his ear, were always around him saying something, and it actually upped his game. So if you're mentally strong, you can take your game to the next level, and if you're mentally weak, like you said, you'll disintegrate.
Let's move to what I think is one of the real controversial issues that came out of this World Cup. The issue of decreasing the number of teams participating at the tournament down to 10, which means most of the associate nations would battle to get into the tournament. The likes of your home nation, Zimbabwe would certainly be under pressure. How do you view this?
I think ICC are taking a backward step in that there's 10 test-playing nations, Zimbabwe being one of them. There's 34 associate nations, and then there's about 78 affiliate nations. So you're not giving any of those guys a chance to play on the biggest stage. And by reducing the numbers, I think it's more of a commercial way of doing things. They want to play the best teams at the tournament. It's not developing the other nations, it's not developing the players at all, because those associate nations don't play half the cricket that the test-playing nations do. And you talk about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe will have to qualify for the next World Cup in 2017 in Bangladesh against the associate countries. So I think it's a backward step.
Some of the associate nations came out quite strongly and said things like, what's the purpose of us playing cricket then if we can't appear on the big stage? Do you share that kind of sentiment, that it would really be such a massive blow to cricket? Dave Richardson came out over the weekend and spoke about, oh no, we'll make sure that we develop cricket, but surely cricketers want to play on the biggest stage against the best players. That's how you develop the game.
Well, Steve Tickolo was here and he was part of SABC Sports, the team that was presenting. And I said to him, if you look at Scotland, this is the most cricket Scotland will play against the top nations in the next 12 months. And I said, is Kenya, I brought up a point and I said, is Kenya playing the same amount of cricket right now against the top nations? No, they're sitting at home.
Yeah.
So I think what Dave Richardson's point is sort of contradicting that, in that you're giving these guys a lot of opportunity. Yes, Kenya are here playing qualifying tournaments sponsored around the South African Cricket Association, but not around the ICC.
Yeah.
So as a cricketer, I always wanted to play in the World Cup. I came from an underprivileged background, and my dream was to play on the biggest stage, and I've been to 2 World Cups. Now, what are you saying to the young guy in Afghanistan? What are you saying to the young guy in Zimbabwe trying to ply his trade and make a difference in his life and his community?
World Cup done and dusted, as you guys call it in cricket.
Yeah.
What do you make overall of the tournament that took place in Australia and New Zealand? A great advertisement for the game, or is it a scenario that once again we see that only a few teams really are competitive?
Well, if you look, you're talking about the minnows and the big teams, we saw a bit of everything. We saw low-scoring, competitive games. We saw high-scoring games, particularly from South Africa. And as a viewer and as a fan, I think it's one of the most successful tournaments the ICC have held. If you look at there's about 36 million people viewed the ICC website in the period, and that's the most in 10 years. And we saw the fans filling up the stadiums, 93,000 people yesterday at the final. Obviously, yes, Australia is playing at home. So I think in the terms of the tournament, it's been a great success. I think once you move away from it, there's going to be the contentious issues of will we have the smaller teams who actually had exciting games in the World Cup? But overall, I think it's been pretty good.
Well, it could only have had a better finish with a different winner, says the rest of the world now.
I agree.
I agree. Thanks very much. Edward Rainsford joining us here today, former Zimbabwean fast bowler and now SABC Sport cricket analyst. We talked about the World Cup. That concluded yesterday. Now let's move on and take a look now at our picture of the day. It comes from Aminu Gamawa. Many heartwarming pictures from Maiduguri. This old man was sick, but insisted on coming out to vote. We're talking about Nigeria Decides. Look at that lovely picture being pushed along in a cart to go and make your cross. Because ultimately, if you don't vote, you don't matter. Let's take a look at what's on our Facebook page here at Newsroom. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa must provide the country and Parliament with a comprehensive report on the state of Eskom. This is according to the DA's parliamentary leader, Musi Mamani. Then, of course, voting in Nigeria's tensest election since the end of military rule in 1999 slipped into a second day yesterday after technical glitches and Boko Haram militants who killed more than a dozen people in drive-by shootings marred proceedings. And more on Faisal's loyal to the Saudi-backed President Abdrabbu Mansour Habdi clashed with Iranian-allied Houthi fighters yesterday in downtown Aden, the absent leader's last major foothold in that country. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on Newsroom Facebook page. If you want live time news updates, you can go to sabc.co.za/news. That's /news for all the latest. Now, we here at Newsroom, we want to know what is happening across the African continent at all times. Now, we found a way to help us to do so. Author of the book, Connect with the Continent, Terry Bean, gives us a look into who he's talking to and where he's been traveling in his travels around the continent. Recently, he spoke to an African leader in contemporary music and design, who's Enyi Emerua. This interview. Let's have a look.
this is Terry, sitting here with Eni Omarua. Eni is one of the leading lights in the contemporary art and design and music industry across the continent. And Eni and I have been talking about one of the key challenges in terms of is how we project an image of Africa to the rest of the world. And we both know a real kind of cosmopolitan and contemporary view of the continent, but that's not really kind of how people see it from the outside.
Not at all. Africa is has its role, its brand, and anything that exists outside of that cannot be true, cannot be real. If it's not war-torn, disease-filled, hungry, bloated, it's just always the same stories. There's a propaganda that is told, but I think for us to tell the real spectrum, which some of these things do exist for sure.
So, and you recently scored a series called Before 30. What's that all about? Before 30
is an episodic. It's a TV drama about 4 women, just the story of their lives. And the principal character, it's called Before 30 because she wants to be married before she turns 30, and so it's all that she gets up to in order to find her man, find her husband. And it was a great opportunity to just tell a story from a music perspective, I think featuring African music, Nigerian music that's off the beaten path. It's not all Afro-pop. There's soul, there's R&B, there's slight jazz, people like Somi, people like Bez, Ruby, Timmy Dollface, people like that.
So it's not all about Afro-pop. There is a very strong kind of jazz R&B movement across the continent. Who are the leading lights for you as far as you're concerned?
Of course, Bez. Bez is a soul act that is amazing, live performer like crazy. There's another girl here based in Nigeria called Timmy Dollface, who I absolutely love. Somi, who is out of Uganda, well, she's half Ugandan, half Rwandan, has worked with an amazing musician called Kobam Sasoko, who's this blind guy who wrote Asha, Fire in the Mountain. Sure. It's full, just full amazing music.
Over 20 years now, South Africa has just been one big construction site, building houses.
This is the only country in the world that provides free housing. The government has done very well in this particular area.
What are the challenges facing human settlements?
Most of the people who move into urban centers are looking for jobs, basically, and that increases the pressure in that particular area. We know exactly what needs to be done where and how it should be done.
They were also building houses for married staff, and you had the married quarters and the hostels. And all of that stopped. What happened?
Nothing has stopped, Mr. Mateza. We cannot solve the housing problems on our own in this country. We cannot wait for government as well.
It's a joint venture, if I were to put it like that, between the public sector and the private sector, particularly in the area of mines.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. COSATU's General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi is expected to be ousted by the Federation today. COSATU's Central Executive Committee will meet in Johannesburg to decide the fate of Vavi. At a news conference yesterday, Vavi said he wouldn't resign and dared the CEC to fire him. He also confirmed he will not attend the meeting, and this will be the second meeting Vavi is boycotting. Eskom Chairman Zola Tsotsi will know his fate today. The power utility will decide whether the embattled chairman should be suspended in a special board meeting. Tsotsi is to face allegations of misconduct involving dishonesty. He is alleged that Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown is orchestrating moves to remove him from the troubled Parastatals Board. Nigeria's Elections Commission says it intends to announce the winner of the presidential vote by the end of today. Polling in some places had to be extended to yesterday because of technical problems. There's been widespread praise for the way Nigerians voted in general elections at the weekend despite problems that occurred. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us at Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. Now, a social cohesion report back summit is taking place at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. This report back summit is the result of the 2012 National Social Cohesion Summit that was held in Kliptown here in Johannesburg, that provided a platform for individuals, organizations and communities from all sectors of society to discuss and map a way forward in creating a caring and proud South African society. The summit culminated in the adoption of a 12-point declaration. Now, the Minister of Arts and Culture, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa, is the convener of this summit. The Social Cohesion Project is part of a cabinet-approved macro-social strategic framework. Well, in Port Elizabeth, our reporter, Iviwe Porti, well, she spoke to the Arts and Culture Minister a little bit earlier.
Welcome to Port Elizabeth, Eben, where the summit is being held, the Summit of Social Cohesion. And mainly today is the Report Back Summit, so we'll have some people speaking. But here with me now, I have the Minister of Arts and Culture, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa, who will be speaking to us a bit more about social cohesion and what is expected to go down today, and those speakers that will be speaking as well, and what are some of the reports that we're looking to hear. Good morning, Minister, and welcome.
Morning, thank you.
Minister, can you please just give us a bit of a brief in terms of social cohesion and what we're looking to obtain looking forward?
Well, you would recall that in 2012 we had the first National Summit on Social Cohesion. Mainly it's the report back today on things which have unfolded since then. In the main has been the emphasis on ensuring that our society deepen conversation and dialogue within itself or amongst the society members, as it were, and look at how far has that gone vis-a-vis the broader objective of nation building and social cohesion. This is a mammoth task for a new nation like ours, because if you are to achieve a socially coherent nation, there are a lot of interconnected things we have to deal with. Some of them are systemic. For instance, you can't talk social cohesion without talking economic justice, for instance, in our society. And we've got to confront some of the discriminatory practices within our society. Racism is one of them. Xenophobia or Afrophobia. And these have reared their ugly heads yet again. And this is the task all of us as a nation we are faced with in confronting them. So we've been having this interaction with our communities. There are areas which we think that need to be strengthened. For instance, what you see happening in universities, in some schools, for instance, where racist bigots are doing their things yet again. And we are saying that if there are things we have to be intolerant about, are such things as discriminatory practices. So we'll be engaging more in these institutions, we'll be going there and interacting with them. But we also have to take into cognizance some contemporary matters which have arisen in this period. For instance, the signs and symbols of a new South Africa we are building, the reshaping of the heritage landscape in our society. You have heard the talks about the protest about the road statue the Louis Botha statue in Parliament and King George and so on. What we're saying to our people is that they don't have to break anything. There are instruments geared towards transformation, including the reshaping of the heritage landscape. We have the National Heritage Resources Act, number 25 of 1999, which essentially allows people to apply and protest for something to be removed or to be changed, and things have happened. Names have been changed, statues have been removed, no skies fell.
Minister, without disturbing you, what are some of the programs that we can look forward to seeing that will then maybe look at the problems that are within this, the program that you guys maybe have identified from 2012 up until now?
It's a lot of programs. As I said, we will be deepening our interaction with different players in society. In schools, we have a passport of patriotism, where kids in schools are taught about the important signs and symbols of our time, the Constitution, the national anthem, and so on and so forth. Because you've got to build this patriotism from that level. That what we're trying to achieve through this is that our people from an early age would love themselves, would love their country, and will continue those programs. But as I say, if you go to other institutions like workplaces, there are challenges. First and foremost, you must confront the vices which are there, and continue with the program. Mainly our program revolves around partnerships in our society, because nobody single-handedly would ever deliver any society to a new nation, a building nation, as individuals. That's why from a government point of view, we have a group of departments which are working on what we call Outcome 14 of nation building and social cohesion, because there are issues of the economy here, as we spoke about economic justice, that without changing the material conditions of our people for the better, it will be difficult to attain the objective we have set ourselves. So those programs will continue. As you would notice here, we have people from all social stations, religious, business, academia, and so on. And all of them have one thing in common, that let us build within the unifying perspective. And we do have in South Africa. The Constitution and its values, for instance, is one of them. The National Development Plan, which is the Vision 2030 of our country, is another unifying perspective. The majority of the people in this country agree that these are the correct tools to be used to foster unity within our society.
Thank you so much, Minister.
My pleasure.
Eben, that was Minister Nathi Mthethwa. We're still going to be here for the remaining time of the day, just to hear what are some of the resolutions that will come from each province, as all provinces have been tasked to come and report back on what is happening in their communities and how can that be improved. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much. That was Iviwe Poti speaking there to our Minister of Arts and Culture, Nathi Mthethwa. Yes, we all need to be agents of social cohesion here in South Africa. It is all of our responsibility as individuals to build our nation and not to divide and not to spread racial hate. That's not what we need to do. Social cohesion is all of our duty in South Africa. Let's move on and go to our neighboring country, Zimbabwe, where some by-elections have been taking place. Here are some of the tweets incoming. Hillary Chindodo says, if people thought Zim dodged a bullet when the MDC didn't win elections, why do they seem afraid of ZANU-PF winning more seats in by-elections? That's a question she asked. Jones Musada says, point of fact, the legality, constitutionality, morality and legitimacy of Zimbabwe's general or by-elections is not based on the MDC's participation. Of course, some MPs within the MDC are at odds with Morgan Tsvangirai, causing much consternation in Zimbabwe. Padamoya Mzulu says, where's the new interest in by-elections among voters coming from considering the declining political economy? Don't really know what you're saying. Just asking, he says. Anyhow, suppose we all have a right to ask and a right to know. You're watching Newsroom here. That's where we're going to wrap it today. We are broadcasting live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. Don't forget, we also stream live on YouTube at that time, so you can watch us in the office if you like. The show is also available on demand on our YouTube channel. That is all the time, throughout the whole day. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.